Nice to meet ya. Betty Butter, say you can have my daughter. Make we link up later.
Welcome back to the 4th episode of Nowhere to Hide. I'm your host, Alexis, and I am joined here by my sister, Pat. But basically, this episode is going to be the start to my series on just highlighting personal and unique experiences within first generations or foreign Americans that I may have on my platform, and just also overall evaluating just the mental disconnect that we will all have with our parents in some way. But going to my sister, introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about just where you came from and where you're at right now.
Okay, yeah. Well, hi, I'm Pat. I also
Tell them where our parents come from again.
okay.
First generation.
Cameroonian.
Yes.
So our parents are from Cameroon. We were born here in the United States. Grew up in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Oddly enough, I was born here in Charlotte, North Carolina, but I spent my childhood in South Carolina. Went to Spartanburg Day School. I graduated and went to USC Columbia first for college, and then I ended up going to Greenville Tech, and then once I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, I ended up going to AB Technical College there. Currently, I am a nail tech here in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yes. Nails
Yes.
right here in case you guys want to see for those who are watching the video version.
Having gotten my cosmetology degree, I decided to go down the nail route, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Okay. Well, happy for you to be joining, and she's my first guest, so yay to that. But now let's dive a little bit deeper. So I'm going to be asking you now, tell me about your point of view, just growing up in South Carolina, and just how it was going to the private school that we both went to, because if you guys have listened to my previous episodes, I've mentioned Spartanburg Day School. That was a high school, private high school that we went through. Not much diversity, and you guys pretty much know how that school affected me and just that overall environment. I chose to kind of change myself, mold myself to fit into the environment, whereas Pat did not do that. I remember because, again, I will keep reminding y'all, K through 12 school, me and Patricia were there since we were little, 5K, whatever age that was.
Yeah.
And, being little, y'all heard in past episodes, I just would do what everyone else thought I should do, like the things everyone thought I should like or whatever. But I remember since I was little too, Patricia just always remained true to herself. Like, she would always express what she liked, didn't like, whether that went with the societal norm. Like, she would dress however she wanted to dress, didn't care what people said. Yeah.
Okay, so you're definitely right in what you're saying on how I grew up. And at the day school, I definitely, marched to the beat of my own drum. I knew that I was different and I was a bit like weird than other people, but it wasn't something that really stopped me necessarily.
And why would you say you were weird? Like, why would you use that?
Because I didn't really have like a lot of friends necessarily. It was hard for me to make friends because I had very like niche interests at school. And I was a bookworm. I was really into like different types of music.
Like K-pop. I remember K-pop was one of the...
Yeah, I was into K-pop. I was into like a lot of like, like emo and like metal music. I just didn't like typical
It wasn't the
things.
typical thing that a black woman, or not even woman, but a black kid, like, what was it? Like, early-ish 2000s? Either way, just that's not how black kids express themselves typically in our society there.
Definitely, it was... I mean, I don't know if I want to say shocking, but it just wasn't, it didn't register to people as something that was normally done. So it just made me stand out in that way. Like I said, I didn't have a lot of friends, but the friends I did make, they shared like kind of the similar like of not being typical or just doing what we liked.
How would you say, like, towards the end of your high school career, like how it was for you at that school and in that environment? Because you were the only Black girl in your whole entire grade. Besides that mix, like there was a mixed girl
Yeah.
in your grade. But I mean, pretty much like by the eye, you were the only Black girl in your grade. One of, like, I guess when we were both in high school at the same time, it was like we were one of four, I think, in that whole high school.
I think you're right about that. It was some small
Like it was
number.
me, you, and then the two other ones in my grade. And then that's it at the time when we were in high school, right?
Yeah.
But how would you say your point of view was? Because I feel like towards the end of high school for me that I've mentioned before, I was sort of kind of like breaking out of the not caring and everything. Where would you say your mindset was? Because already from an early start at that school, you already recognized that you were different. You didn't have many friends. I remember we've talked about it before, how like you wouldn't really have people eating with you, nothing, just because people they already deemed you from the beginning when we were in 5K through like middle school is different. So by high school, where would you say you were?
I would say by high school, I definitely joined a lot more things. Like I became very active in the band. So that's where I had most of my like friends. I mean, we were around each other a lot. So I would say, yes, I had like band friends and we would all be like close in band. I wouldn't say I necessarily hung out with everyone I went to band with, but it was definitely a community for me that was like, it was something good to put like my focus and my energy into. So by high school, I definitely had more people that I was like closer to. And it didn't feel as lonely in that way because I felt like I kept myself more busy and I was able to get more involved into the little things.
Yeah.
Definitely it was a big difference from like middle school, elementary school, Pat, to like high school because I definitely just didn't have enough of like a sense of self to find out what I wanted to engage in. And that's where things were difficult for me when I was younger because I didn't want to conform to what was typical. But at the same time, I knew that it was lonely because I was,
portraying yourself.
Yeah, I was being
as
myself.
Yourself, unfortunately.
Yeah,
That's
unfortunately, it's like it was a double-edged sword. It's like I can be myself, but it's like I was kind of lonely in the fact that I was being myself and it wasn't received in the way that you would think it would be received.
And we've talked a little bit about just the private school we went to and how that affected you just being who you want to be. But tell me a little bit about our culture, African culture, and just how, I guess, our family, because I know I played a negative part. I can say that. So I played a negative part towards just you feeling comfortable and being yourself growing up because who was I back then? I was the one who was just worried about what everyone else thinks and fitting in. I see my sister isn't really fitting in with what's normal. Not going to say I ever aided in like making fun or doing whatever, but I also didn't really come to your defense as much as I really could have, which I regret. But I know with our culture and just how our family sees different, like I know Africans out there, like just seeing the way she presents herself now with different colored hair and stuff and the jewelries, piercings, like Africans will already look at that and deem her as something. So growing up with our family, how would you say that has affected you growing up to now in presenting yourself?
That's definitely a very good question. I definitely struggled with identity because of the standards that were held in our African household.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the eldest in the household, so I had to take on a lot of responsibility. And that weight plus the weight of having to do really well in school was like a lot. So I had to like find my own ways to cope with it. It was difficult. And I feel like the ways that it impacted me were that I was especially stressed out about school I had very bad like insomnia, and that definitely affected me because it impacted my studies. Like I was procrastinating on like everything because I was constantly like worried about grades. But at the same time, I had a lot of responsibilities because, like we would like on the weekends, it wasn't really a weekend because we were constantly cleaning. Like we weren't allowed to sleep past like
Yard
8
work.
something. They would be like, why are you sleeping? Like it's late. And it would be like 9 something. And we would have to like get up and do things. So I felt like even though it was like the weekend, I was constantly working and being constantly in motion and having to take care of things.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. And mom and dad, it was the time where mom was constantly working.
So
like, we didn't see her.
responsibilities fell on us, especially being the women of the household, having to clean, like cook, do this and that.
Yeah.
Even though mostly cleaning, for sure cleaning.
Definitely.
Because somehow my mom would still get it together to cook for us, working all the jobs she was working.
Yeah, somehow. That was, I just remember us coming home from school, I think even while we were younger too, and we'd immediately go down to the basement and go see mom and like kiss her and then go back upstairs and like maybe fix a snack and do our homework because she worked nights, so she would sleep during the day. So we really
Always.
didn't see her very much during the week. Maybe the weekend when we'd be able to see her outside of her hours. But I know I specifically remember how difficult that was for me because I didn't really get that closeness that I needed with mom. And that's why I feel like our relationship is definitely better now. But it was hard because she was working hard to take care of us. But I feel like the sacrifice
was
the relationship. And dad was constantly, he was picking us up from school, doing that kind of stuff. But he also was working a lot. So a lot of things were neglected because, he has his responsibilities too. But it's just like, it's like a balance that couldn't be met. I feel like because of all the responsibilities that needed to be done. And I was the eldest, had to take care of you, had to take care of Michael, made sure like the food was done, things were clean by the time people came home.
I agree.
And if things weren't taken care of, a lot of times it fell on me too because I was the oldest. And like, why wasn't I making sure that things were getting done?
I feel like that's even a universal thing. Like, I feel like that's a universal thing when it comes to African families and specifically the pressure falling on the eldest sibling. I feel like even amongst the cousins, like we've talked about that within like the cousins in our family and the ones who are the eldest in their little like family household, like they all share in that stress that our parents will put onto us, like unknowingly at times. They'll just put that onto us of just having high expectations of completing things and being the best. You're the leading example of the family. Like that stress can either make or break you at times.
Yeah, I definitely, yes, it definitely did. And I distinctly remember like I was always stressed. I never felt like not stressed growing up. And I remember one day like getting my report cards because remember they would just like send them quarterly in the mail. And I'll get my report and we have to show it to like dad. And he like, I would maybe get like maybe what
like one
maybe
C?
like A minus or maybe like it was like a B plus and he'll be like, why did you fail that class?
See, I'd be the one who gets the C's, honestly. That's why I mentioned C.
Yeah, I know you did. You didn't
I would at least get one C, but they would still really ridicule me for that one.
You really, like, you struggled with your ADD, ADHD. That was really something that was a problem for you, though. And I really felt for you because I could tell you really were trying. But it's like you only could try as much as you could. Because you were neurodivergent in that way where your learning didn't come as easily to you. And for me, I was pretty all right at school, minus me like being all over the place and procrastinating, but I got things done and I still got, good grades. I got A's and B's. So, but for me, unless I got like the top like A's, then I felt like, I was failing at stuff. And that was another stress because, I just wanted dad to be like happy and proud of what I was doing. So I felt like I was constantly doing stuff to get that approval from dad. That was
Right.
also very, very stressful. I don't know. I had a lot of responsibilities and it definitely impacted me. But that's just being the eldest in an African household. You have to take all those responsibilities and just kind of like push through that.
Exactly. It's just the struggle of being the eldest. Can't
Yep.
relate.
Yeah, I can't relate.
So, in light of Pride Month, since it's coming towards the end, I just want to ask, you identify as non-binary. I don't know if you guys peeped in the beginning, seeing his pronouns, he, him, but I just want you to tell us a little bit about that. Like, how is it being non-binary and also identifying as African? Because we both know, and I know a lot of Africans out there know, that Africans aren't really outward in coming out as being non-binary, let
Yeah.
alone like gay, lesbian, or however you may identify, because
Yes.
of our culture and just the stigma on that. So let's talk about it a little bit.
Yes, I am non-binary. I identify as non-binary. It wasn't an easy road to get to, obviously.
Mm.
I feel like I always kind of struggled with how I presented myself. I never really had like a set style growing up. I went through like phases of like trying different things, but
Remember
like
those phases?
yes, I went through a lot of different phases, but like nothing like truly like it was me. Like I never really felt like that. I just kind of dressed how like mom wanted us to dress. She always liked the bright colors. You know, she was always being
Sparkling.
like, you should wear the bright color or something like that. And she's always like, you always like to wear the darker colors. I guess that was kind of the beginning of me kind of like experimenting with like me and like my style. And then graduating and going to college, it just really opened my eyes because I didn't know that there were the type of people that I saw every day on campus.
I feel like it took both of us
Yes.
leaving our town and going to college and just seeing a different
Yeah.
type of people.
Like I saw people from like all over the world, which of course was one thing that just surprised me like happily. I was just like, wow, I just so great to see all different sorts of walks of life here. And I start to see more people in the LGBTQ plus community, queer community that were out and doing stuff on campus, maybe had like little clubs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I also made friends with people that I identified with any identity in the community. And it made me think to myself, I mean, I didn't really identify outwardly as anything when I was in college. I just kind of was like, I guess I just had an internal like, I'm gonna kind of like play around and see, like, I feel like there's something about this community, but I don't know if I fit into it necessarily.
Yeah.
And then after going through college there and then moving back home, and then eventually I ended up in Asheville, North Carolina, that's when I feel like my identity kind of like took off because I was surrounded by so many creatives and people in that community that allowed me to feel way more comfortable like expressing myself. And I just kind of flourished in that way. I realized my identity as someone that was non-binary. I realized and like played around with the pronouns that worked for me and identified with me as a person. And that's how I got to where I am. But it was hard because I don't see people like me anywhere. Like nowadays, it's great because you see more and more of it in the media.
Right.
But growing up, I truly thought like I was the only
Representation?
person.
Yeah,
Like
I agree
thought I was the only
completely.
person. Like there's no one in the family. Like I had never heard of anyone like being in the community in the family like ever.
Like
And I
kids
thought-
nowadays don't realize how good they have it with representation.
Yeah.
Because if the representations and different types of people were on the tabloids now, or you get what I'm saying?
You know what
If
you're
they
saying.
were then like they are now, like I feel like we would have gotten out of the rut that we were in identity-wise, like at least sooner. Because
Yeah.
it took not seeing enough Black people in big roles, or like for you, just seeing non-binary people in big roles, or just people in the LGBTQ community in general, just being on the screen and in a positive light even.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. You know, now you
But
have
now that's
like,
everywhere.
yeah. it was definitely really hard. I definitely felt a lot of negativity towards myself because I felt like there was something wrong with me because there was no one around me that was like this. There must be like something wrong.
And I know our family didn't help with that much either. Because again,
Yes.
Africans
I definitely
really
remember.
blame America. They say Americans are what, they created that LGBTQ thing. When in reality, like, there are people part of the LGBTQ community everywhere in the world. But being in that small environment that we were, it took us getting out of it to realize it. Because when you're really in a small environment for so long and you know it better than anyone, it's like you start thinking that everything is one way. Like we were just talking before even like filming the podcast, how like I didn't, and this sounds silly. Yes, it does. But like I didn't even realize there was such thing as an African presenting themselves as gay, lesbian, or however, until I moved to Charlotte and I met and even befriended some Africans who fall in the LGBTQ community as well. And it's like the way it was painted to me growing up, it's like, no, that's just an American thing. Like Americans have their own thing going on. They're choosing to be that way. But no, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
It's definitely, representation is really important for those kinds of things. Because, I definitely felt the same. And I just feel grateful that I was able to like live in an environment where I felt comfortable enough to like kind of like soar with that kind of thing. I actually met someone that was African in Asheville that identified in the queer community too, which was also really nice to see. While there isn't a really big like Black or African community in Asheville, I was happy to find that connection with that person and realize slowly as I'm building new relationships with Africans, I'm just like, wow, so I'm not alone in how I'm feeling. Because, there's more Africans that identify in the community than you probably even know. A lot of people probably in our family don't even know anyone that is African and in the LGBTQ+.
And also, I'm going to put non-binary, the definition below, because I already talked to my mom, like, last week. She didn't even know what Pride Month was, but I educated her on that. But I'm going to put descriptions because I want this platform for you guys to, especially Africans who may not be much in the know. Like, I want you to be able to use this platform to just enlighten yourself on just what these things may mean and how you can be conscious of it.
I just remember I did kind of like slowly as I was coming out of my shell, I did talk to mom and dad about a little bit of things when I was like, I definitely felt differently in my sexuality at a point. I mentioned it to them. It definitely was very rockily received by them. But I just knew that I was different in that way. I've always been like different in many ways, like with being neurodivergent and all of that kind of stuff. But I knew that my sexuality was also different. And I guess that's what makes it hard too, because I feel like I've always been the black sheep of the family, different in every way. Just in a way, I'm just like, why? Why must I be different in this way too?
It's
it
okay,
just
though.
Makes it difficult.
But I get what you mean by that.
Yeah.
But hey, that's life.
That's life.
But here, to move on from that, but I appreciate you sharing everything you said. Let's go to the nitty gritty that I'm starting this whole series for, mental disconnect. So as a first gen, would you say overall you have some sort of mental disconnect with your parents?
I definitely would say that I have a mental disconnect with our parents.
And what would you say when I ask you that, when you first think mental disconnect with your parents? Like, what are the things that you've experienced that you've realized is just a disconnect? Obviously, one is just the way they're understanding, like, your sexuality. That could be one. Just because they didn't grow up with people presenting themselves like you're presenting yourself, so it is a little bit foreign. But what else would you say?
I would say maybe, like, an acknowledgement of feelings, because I feel like we definitely were not on the same page. Or if we did communicate, and I got emotional about something, I would be called like a snowflake or someone that, is being dramatic about things.
Dramatic, yeah.
Yeah, I know that was definitely a mental disconnect because it was just me being a good communicator and verbalizing something that I wanted to tell them. But, because of that disconnect, it always led to us like butting heads or something of the sort.
Yeah, I get what you're saying with that. And obviously we know, like in my last episode, I kind of dove into mental disconnect, my 3 whys on that. But overall, we know this mental disconnect is because, simply speaking, we were brought up here and they were brought up there. We were brought up surrounded by different things that were perceived to us as normal. So obviously it's bound to be a disconnect. But now I want to ask you if you care to minimize that disconnect with your parents, one, and how do you feel like you'd want to go about? Because obviously we could continue the cycle of not talking about things, or we can do something about it. And like you said, your relationship with our parents has improved over time. But obviously, we're still paying for that disconnect to this day in our own different ways with them. So do you feel like you're at a position with that disconnect where it is what it is? Because I met a lot of Africans that say, like, it is what it is with our parents. They're set in their ways, whatever. They'll just let it be and let it continue to be what it is. Or do you care to change it? And how would you want to change it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I definitely am always trying to change it. Our relationships are still in the very beginning of being repaired, because that's just how it is. I'm only 25. I've only been out of the house for a small amount of time and relative to other things. Mm-hmm. And we definitely were not very close, like when I did graduate high school. But I'd say now the communication is more frequent, and I'm trying and they're trying, and I feel like that's very good. I guess moving forward, in order to keep fostering that, it's just to have more conversation. And while I understand why some Africans are like, it is what it is, and I do have that mindset, but I'm still going to try in my own ways to bring that connection forward. And I can only control what I do and what I say, and they do the same. So I can still give and try to create that connection, but if they don't try and connect it back, then, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Okay. I like, because what I'm trying to do here? I'm trying to start conversations, guys. Like, it's tough, but we gotta have it. But all right, I guess this is where we're gonna draw it to an end. I appreciate you being my first ever guest on Nowhere to Hide.
Of course.
More guests to come, guys. Series is gonna continue, but stop. All right, but tune in next time, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Bye. Because person like me like that. So tell me how.